Okay, well, here we are again so soon because we have just had so much to talk about behind the scenes that we just thought it was rude not to share, right?
Exactly. Just got to keep going. It's last time was so much fun, and like I say, it's been really easy to just talk about things. So why not record it and share it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is where the juice is. Like I've often thought that with just conversation with friends where like this is the stuff that people want to hear, like how we're really feeling, what's really going on in our minds. And as much as I think we try, we can't always bring that to Instagram when you're just talking to your face on a screen.
No, exactly. Like you say, those kind of candid conversations really do hold like the juicy bits, I feel. And sometimes I think until you're actually talking to someone, you don't even realize how you feel about a certain thing. Because it's not
That's so true.
so yeah.
Yeah, it actually just prompts you to think about things in certain ways, and you're getting a bit of feedback and building on things and asking questions. So we decided to dive deeper into, so last time we chatted all about the fact that we'd had both of us like an 8-year long-term relationship that ended around 2 years ago. So we've decided to dig a bit deeper into the dating life after the long-term relationship in this topic. So tell me how you're feeling firstly, because I know this feels a little bit edgy for us both to talk about, and I think there's quite a few different reasons for that. Like, what's coming up for you?
Yeah, I think the main thing is for me, one, like say, when you haven't planned what you're gonna say, sometimes some things can come out and then it's like, oh gosh, I didn't that maybe didn't land right, or I didn't really think I was thinking that. The other thing is obviously I'm always very conscious of being respectful, and um obviously with most experiences there's always someone on the other side of it, so I'm always quite
Yeah.
conscious of how things land for that other person as well, so just always keeping it respectful and stuff, so I'm always conscious of that. But yeah, you're getting nervous, don't you, because you're just like, what am I gonna say?
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what else I was thinking? Like, I just think it's still very, or it feels it when I'm thinking about like, sort of how much do you share? What are the boundaries? And we're gonna try and be unfiltered, but this is still like private life, and it's still quite taboo for women, I feel like, to talk about relationships and sex, and these are all the hidden things that you're not supposed to talk about. Like,
Fun
it's
things.
a bit the fun stuff. That's what we all want to hear, though, and it's what we all benefit from hearing about each other, like, because you only sometimes realize your own desires or feel confident to express your own desires when you hear someone go first. So hopefully we'll bring a bit of that to the mix as well, without feeling like we have shared our whole lives like overspill.
It's wanting to be authentic and honest. Like, I'm quite an open book. So if it was just me, I'd be like, yeah, just talk about it all. Which I do most of the time anyway. But yeah, I just have that little voice inside being like, oh, make sure you're not oversharing too much about someone else's life. So I'm gonna, yeah, keep it about my experiences.
Oh, that's quite interesting how we're different, because I have kept everything private my whole life, like a lot of stuff. Like, so it's only really the last few years that I'm opening up, and now I feel like I probably don't even share that much, but I feel like a professional oversharer sometimes. And like, I'm just going to tell people how I'm feeling about the fact that this has happened in my day. Like, nobody needs to know, but now that I know my emotions better, I do want to share.
Yeah, it's funny that actually, because I think I used to be the same, like very much a closed book. I didn't really want to burden anyone with my feelings and thoughts. And I do think actually, certainly more when I broke up with my long-term boyfriend, that was a lot easier to be like, okay, right, I've got to deal with all these feelings now. And then it was like, oh, okay, right. Now I'm dealing with my feelings. I feel so much more comfortable sharing it with others. So yeah, actually it kind of leads on to, I think, kind of getting that independence coming out of a relationship helps you monitor your own emotions and being okay with them, I think. Do you reckon?
Yeah, do you know what? That's exactly the same time that I started learning more about emotions, and also expressing myself and telling people stuff that you're going through so that you can get support for it, not just thinking you have to deal with it all on your own. So like that was the first time I remember thinking, because we actually split up whilst we were traveling. So we were in Cyprus for a year over the pandemic, and we stayed together for the rest of that year that we'd already planned, like stayed living together for about 5 months. So typical me would normally have been like, I'll just sort of like deal with it myself, everything's fine, and I'll just sort of slink home and be like, oh yeah, me and Ryan broke up. Oh, me and that person broke up. And it's, yeah, but I'm fine because it was ages ago. Like I've dealt with it all, and obviously, like we're not fine, are we? So yeah, that was the first time, and it was really hard ringing up and being like, "Oh, this has happened," and like, but I am fine, but I'm not. But you can support me, so
Because
yeah.
I haven't really thought about this before until you've just prompted that. But when it's really hard not to say their name, isn't it?
I mean, there's no surname.
No, that's true. But when me and my partner broke up, we were actually living with my parents during, I think the lockdown had stopped. We were out of the lockdown. Yeah, we were very much out of the lockdown. But yeah, we were living with my parents. So I was almost forced to be like, help me, because it was really hard. Obviously, I couldn't hide how distraught I was. So yeah, that was really interesting. I wonder if I wasn't living with them, how that would have played out actually. So it's interesting to think.
Yeah, that is interesting. So what sort of headspace were you in around dating, like after the end of your long-term relationship, like, and or sort of, was there like a turning point where you were like, I'm ready for something more, or like where was that at for you?
It was really difficult because actually the breakup was stretched out quite a lot. It took us maybe like a good year or so to actually detach from one another, because we live in a small town. He actually works for my dad.
Oh,
So it's all like very intertwined.
all the ties.
Yes. But like the connection that we had was just so strong. We really actually struggled to stay away from one another. So in terms of dating, it did obviously kind of take quite a long time because I hadn't detached properly for a long time. But yeah, I remember like downloading Hinge for the first time and being like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm ready. And I must admit, like, as soon as you get on it, I mean, you know what Hinge is like, but I was like, oh gosh, I feel horrendous now. Like, it's a really horrible feeling, kind of being vulnerable, I suppose, and then being met with people that you just don't really gel with, and you're just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Am I going to be single forever? So yeah, it's a really confusing headspace, and I think alongside that, actually thinking, am I really ready in myself to share my life with a new person? So a lot of my focus was actually on finding more of myself, like spending more time on my own, doing things that light me up. So yeah, it's been actually a really long process.
Well, it is, isn't it? Like, and it sounds like you were sort of in on the apps, like not early days, but sort of at the start of being ready to do that. I've only just, I don't want to say succumbed to the apps. Like, it was my choice to go on there as like a new challenge, but yeah, I have my own sort of views and thoughts on like dating app life. I'm not sure how much I'm actually enjoying that at the moment, but giving it a go and being open. And I think it's always good, like you said, to push the vulnerability thing a little bit, and it gets yourself out there. And I think if nothing else, I was kind of thinking like it's kind of just more of a, like an energetic thing. Like I'm open to meeting someone new. And I remember saying to one of my friends, if I don't like meet someone from that, I kind of feel like just the fact that I've gone on that maybe just allows more people to naturally come into my life in the regular way.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're telling the universe you're ready. It's like a little way of being like, okay, I'm opening myself up to the opportunity to meet someone, and yeah, it will happen when it happens. I must admit as well, I don't actually know if I met many people through the apps. I'm trying to think. I think I did actually go on to date quite a few different people, and I think probably only one of them, one or two actually, was through an app. Which is interesting, which I actually loved. It's so wonderful meeting people in a natural setting. And like you say, when I feel like you're open to it, you do almost like pour something out, like people can see that you're open to talk, and yeah, just like be open to meeting new people.
Yeah 100%. So I think our apps experience are pretty much like yours is sort of at the start, and mine's only just quite current. So do you have like a first experience of meeting someone, and how did that go down? Do you remember that particularly, or just like any of the highlights?
Well, one of them, this was on Tinder, and I absolutely hated Tinder. But I actually happened to meet someone who literally lives down the road from me, which in Bridport just doesn't really happen because everyone knows everyone.
Okay, yeah.
I remember actually it was really funny as well, because I remember seeing this guy on Tinder, and I actually recognized him from school, but he was a lot older than me. And I literally remember seeing something like, oh, I used to fancy him so much in school. Like I think he was in like sixth form when I was in year 7. I just remember being like, but yeah, I actually remember going on a date with him, the first date. Yeah, and it's just such a vulnerable position, isn't it? Like that. I literally remember walking down the hill and seeing him at the bottom, just being like, oh my God, what am I doing? And I think it's just scary, isn't it? Because you just don't know what that connection, if there is going to be a connection, like you're putting yourself in such a vulnerable position, being, is the conversation going to flow, or is there going to be loads of awkward silences? One thing for me as well is like, if we go and eat, is he going to eat really loud?
Do you know, I've thought about that recently. Like I like silence when I'm eating. Like I try and be mindful about it, and I really like just to have a quiet meal. So I haven't had that meal dating experience, and I feel like it's like a waste of food. Like they're not really enjoying the food.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one as well. That's something that I think I've thought a lot about over the last year of dating, is like food. Like I'm so like passionate about trying new food, I think. And it's funny how people feel so differently about food. I think like some people aren't bothered by it at all. Some people are like, I want to go to this really nice restaurant, and like I suppose it comes down to like common interests, I suppose, but food I feel like is quite an important one. Like especially if a bloke picks a date, it's like, where are they going to take us, or what food do they like? Is it just going to take me to like the chippy around the corner? Or I feel like there's a lot to say about the food involved with dating.
Yeah, there's probably a lot to say about dates and like what actually is planned for them and how they pan out. And like in all honesty, like this is about dating, but I would say I've had a few like experiences in the last couple of years, but I still would say that I haven't really experienced dating, not like the whole like someone's asking you out and you're going on a date not really knowing each other. Like I think that's pretty terrifying. Like I've always got to know people really, really well before letting them in at all. Like my relationships were always, had like 3 major long-term relationships, and it's been like school, uni, and the workplace. So you sort of I already knew these people before embarking on anything further to a certain extent. So I think the concept of someone just like, in fact, because I'm working in the pub at the minute, there was a time last year where someone had messaged me after my shift and said like, hey, was meaning to ask you if you fancied going for a drink. This guy had seen come into the pub twice, like other people knew him. And I was like, what is going on? Like, what do you mean people just ask you if you want to have a drink? I don't even know you. Like,
yeah, I think to be fair, that was one of my rules really, that I didn't want to go for food straight away. I'd like want to go for a walk or something like that, or like, yeah, maybe just a drink but not food. Seems so like intense, doesn't it? But yeah, it's freaky, like you say, when you
I know I'm like weird in that way as well, because obviously people date and it's very, very normal, and the point is that you don't know people and you're getting to know them. But I think I've just always come from this like more safe, like a safer bet, like to spending more time with people that you already know, which is a bit weird. But
that's a really, it's just made me think. One thing I did really struggle with when I first started dating, because obviously I'd come from this 8-year relationship, and we were obviously extremely comfortable with each other. I remember having the feeling when I first started to talk to new people, I was like, I've actually forgotten how to talk to someone new. Like, how much do you share? A lot of the time I felt like I was oversharing, or like maybe like asking too many questions. I was like, oh gosh, I feel like I need to learn how to meet someone for the first time again. Like,
but it's a really weird thing. Like I remember one of my friends telling me that her mom was like, I don't know, she said something like whatever you do, don't be yourself, basically, like at the start. And I'm like, well, that's a really weird like concept, but probably quite a common thing. Like you go out to impress, don't you? And I just don't, since doing all the self-love work and like approaching life in a totally different way, I'm like, I can't be anything other anymore, and I can't do that pretending thing. Like, yeah, you can be polite, and you know, maybe you do learn things about communication, because I do like to have deeper chats with people, and it's cool to try and explore that without just staying like at the small talk level. But yeah, I thought that was that's a funny one, like going into something as somebody who isn't you, to try and build a relationship, like, and then you've got to try and keep that up.
Exactly. And I mean, I've thought about that recently actually, and I just think, if you go in thinking you have to pretend to be something you're not, really you're just wasting everybody's time. You're wasting their time because they're not getting to know the real you. You're wasting your own time, because if they then later on down the line, maybe you don't gel when you both start being authentically yourself. Like, it's just, yeah, a bad use of time. I feel like it is really scary to be vulnerable and show yourself, and certainly you probably do maybe dial it down a little bit. Some people don't, but maybe, yeah, at the beginning you're just like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna kind of dip my toe in, which I think is fine. But I think you should always definitely be authentically yourself, because yeah, otherwise how are you meant to get to know anyone properly? And you could be wasting that time on someone who doesn't align with you, when you could be spending someone who absolutely adores your authentic self. So yeah, I think always be yourself, definitely.
Yeah,
It's tough, it's scary, but I think the best things come from being completely honest with yourself and living in your truth.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one it's a learning curve, isn't it? Like I'm in the we're different ages, right? So I'm in the 30s, and what I notice a lot around me is women have the pressure, the single women around me have the pressure of, I kind of need to get someone, and I need to get someone quite fast now, because if I want a family, then my time is running out and my clock is ticking. And personally, I feel really lucky to never have put that pressure on myself or been too worried about that. And I don't know. I think part of that comes from, my mum was 35 when she had me. I'm not yet 35. I will be later this year. Maybe some things will change, but also like not knowing whether that is something that I want in my future, to have children or not. Or I very much believe things will turn out as they're meant to be and appear at the right time and things like that. But there's so much noise out there in the outside world that I think it puts a lot of pressure on the dating, that, like, I see some, like, people that I've met through traveling and stuff, just in such, like, turmoil, and almost like having to remind them that it's like, oh, this guy has rejected me, or this guy hasn't messaged back, or this guy hasn't this, and I'm having to remind them, like, what did you think about them? Like, firstly, like, what do you think about them? Because they're not even really thinking about that at all at some points. It's more like am I being accepted? Like, I'm going for all these job interviews, like, and is anyone going to pick me? And I feel really sad for that. So I don't know whether there's something, whether you notice any of that in your 20s, but whether there is any other sort of, like, cultural stuff of, like, what everyone else is doing in their 20s that rubs off on how you date as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, this was actually quite a big one for me, because once again, it sounds like we're quite similar in the fact that I've never really put too much pressure on whether I want kids or anything like that, which always comes as a shock when people decide to ask you if you have kids and stuff. And yeah, if you turn around and say, oh, I don't know if I want them or not, that's always a big conversation, which is very strange. Like, why people think that that's any of their business is an interesting one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would never really had much pressure on it. And again, in the long-term relationship, we didn't really make any plans around that. I wasn't that bothered by it. Where was I even going with this point? I've got completely sidetracked. But I think that's something, my focus isn't so much on what I have the luxury obviously being a little bit younger, but my focus is more on, like, I would love to experience those things, but I'd love to experience them with a teammate, and that has to come first. Whereas obviously some people are a lot more focused on, I want to have children, so I need to find a partner. Whereas I'm like, I want to find a partner, and it'd be beautiful if we could create a family together, get married and things like that. But it's tough because it's also, like, quite a sensitive subject in other ways, because I didn't get that from my last partner, and I became a bit of a butt of the joke because of that. So it's really tough. Like, I want to be with someone who's open to the idea of marriage and children without being like, oh, that's what I want. It's just really tough, I feel. There's so many different pressures that kind of go on in your head, and as much as I don't like to compare myself to others, when you're feeling in a bit of a vulnerable space, it's easy to look around and be like, oh, everyone's getting engaged and everyone's having babies and stuff, and you can find yourself getting a bit overwhelmed. So I think mixing that with dating can be really challenging. Yeah, it's really tough. And I think my focus in the latter end of my dating was more about actually what do I have to bring to a relationship first? and how would I expect someone to kind of mold into that. Just like trying to think of those starter foundations, rather than focusing on the later bit. Just a bit of a minefield, really, isn't it, dating?
A bit what?
A minefield.
Yeah, absolutely. It is like if you let it be from all the like the outside noise, for sure. Like, why can't we just decide when we're ready to decide and see how things go? And there's so much about labels, and I don't even know what all the kids are calling it these days, all the different labels that we use.
So many different ones. There's so many different ones. But yeah, I think like I say, one main thing that I thought before dating was actually, what do I have to bring to a relationship, which I think is a really big question that we don't really ask a lot. I suppose it kind of links to what you were just saying about you're looking for that acceptance from someone, but you don't even know if you want to accept them. Like, you're so worried about, oh, I got rejected. But it's like, were they gonna like help fill your life? So yeah, I think it's almost like comes down to like your values and beliefs and things like that. I think that's a really important place to start when you're dating, because you might meet someone who you're super like sexually attracted to, but they might not have the same beliefs as you. And if you're looking for something long term, that's something that you're gonna have to deal with at some point. So yeah, is that like something that you've had to think about, like what your beliefs are and what kind of person you think would fit within, like fit with you, rather than you trying to have to fit with others, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Do you know what? The way I'll talk to you a little bit about like the first experience that I had after my long-term relationship ending, because like I said, I've not really ever been in the dating game. I didn't really want to, like, with what I've learned about manifestation stuff, I kind of just wanted these people to continue to show up in my life. So I was open. Like, yeah, it was similar. You said it was like a long time before you'd like properly split from your partner. We lived together and then went back home to the UK and had stuff to sort, and then we were both going off on our individual like solo travels after that. So I was super looking forward to travel. I'd done a lot, and I think this is really important. Like, before we'd split up, and like the stuff that I was studying was loads of like self-love, exploring my sexuality, exploring my sensuality, exploring books like Mama Gina Pussy. Have you ever heard of that one?
No, I haven't actually.
So it's a very good book. I think there's like a massive part of exploring yourself, which is super powerful when it comes to knowing what you want for the future, knowing yourself in terms of pleasure, knowing, like, just learning more about yourself. Like, we don't get taught to do those kind of things. That's all very taboo stuff. So yeah, anyway, after that I was open to meeting people in Lisbon, my first solo travel. I wasn't looking for a relationship specifically. I wasn't trying, if that makes sense. But what I was doing was like going to different events, pushing myself out my comfort zone a little bit. And I'm going to things where I am gonna meet new people. And this was quite funny because I'd sort of, I think after being there for a little while, I was like, oh, I wonder if I could like dare go on a speed dating event. I was like, oh, I don't know whether I'd be ready for that. And this thing actually came up, and it was called speed friending. And so it was more like the tame version to just make friends. And loads of us showed up at that, and the host never arrived. So we actually just all started chatting, a group of these people, and this is actually where I met this guy, and I was like, oh, okay. And it really challenged my preconceptions to like I don't know, I was like, oh, I never thought I'd feel attracted to this sort of person, or to, like, it was just very interesting how it evolved, and I was like, oh, this is strange what I'm feeling here. And yeah, I suppose, like, long story short, or trying to just fit in, like, how that panned out, is that I knew that this was just the beginning of my solo travel. So I knew that I'm in that place for 3 months. He lived in Lisbon as well. So he's sort of like not going anywhere from his point of view. And I'm like, well, I am definitely not staying here or leaving, like, knew that from early on. So there was kind of this amazing thing happened where there's actually this end date to you know, things, the relationship, situationship, whatever you want to call it. We'd never really, like, defined it, but what that meant was, I realized at first, once I said, oh, I really love to go and explore this beach, and he was like, oh, well, we could go on Thursday, like, I've got a car, we could go. And I was like, oh, I need to just check whether I'm free or not. And I was like, I know I'm free. So the next morning I just messaged him and I was like, I know I'm free. I don't know why I said that. I definitely want to go. And that's like the whole, how I lived the whole of that time, was just saying yes to everything that I wanted to do, not holding back, not playing any games. Like, we play a lot of games, which is really weird.
Yeah, it's really tough, isn't it? It's because you know, deep down, I mean, for the majority of people, I believe it comes from trying to protect yourself, doesn't it? Like, I don't think anyone goes in being like, right, I'm gonna really screw with this person's mind. but obviously, yeah, it's all coming from a place of protection, really. And that's so difficult to navigate, I feel. It's funny because actually, like, as we talk again, like, things coming up and I'm remembering certain things, and I had a very similar sort of situation, in that one of the guys that I was seeing for a bit, met him naturally through mutual friends, which is fantastic, but he was actually over from Australia. And like, he was this beautiful man. We clicked really, really quickly. And yeah, it was this weird situation where I think he was here for, I think he was only here for like 3 weeks. I can't really remember. Sorry, I've got a call and it affects my Zoom. There you go. Yeah, but yeah, it was this really weird situation that, like, obviously he had his own life back in Australia. I had my own life here, and I was quite newly single. But yeah, we had this like really lovely connection, and it's really difficult to be like, oh, okay, right. I just want to, like, I'm going. I was gonna say go balls deep, but just going all in. We've only got a few weeks, like, really enjoying each other's company. And it was so lovely. But again, it's like a really vulnerable position to be in, isn't it? When you're just like, when you're putting your feelings on the line to just enjoy the experience, because obviously he went back to Australia. He was extremely lovely and, like, wanted me to go over there and everything, which would have been an amazing experience. But I think I knew in myself, I was just like, I'm not ready to kind of jump into something so serious where I would move there and live with him for however long. Yeah, which is really tough, because obviously I'm sure what the experience would have been lovely, but like, protecting your feelings and like knowing whether you're ready for something or not is like really hard to navigate. But yeah, it was just, that was obviously quite a fun experience to just be like, right, we've got
All
this.
in.
Yeah, all in. Like, it was really lovely.
Balls deep.
Balls deep. balls deep into it.
Yeah, no, it is. Oh gosh, what was I just gonna lead on with then? Oh, that's totally gone out of my. I just think it's like, what I can see really clearly is like, and if you can lean into this and trust this, I think it's really cool, is like, the right relationships come at the right time for you to learn about yourself, express different parts of yourself, or like not everything has to be forever. And we always like, I think that's what we do. We like kind of get brought up to look at, well, is it the one? Like, is there the one? I'm not sure I really believe in that. It's like, we don't have to look at everything as if it's forever. What if we can enjoy it just for what it is? And I remember thinking with that like experience particularly, oh gosh, I'm gonna say this quote wrong, but you know, it's like to love, oh my god, like to love and to have lost is like better than to never have loved at all.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Is whatever the real wording of that is. And we try and avoid the breakup and the pain, but actually, you know, I was reading something that said like the more breakups we have, the more stronger we get, the more we learn, like the more we can open ourselves up to love, and like whether that's short term or long term or in between. And it's just very different to the way that the world teaches us to do these things,
especially for women, I think.
Yeah,
like if I would, you know, in fact I said this I'm sorry for any family members that are watching this, but you know, when I was single, I knew that I didn't want to be in a relationship, but I wanted to experience being with different people because of the emotional connection that I wanted to try and find, and I knew that I would learn more about myself and what I actually wanted, because I didn't know what I wanted. So yeah, I had a year of my life of where I was just like, I am going to meet new people, I am going to sleep with new people, I want to figure out exactly what I want and what I don't want. And yeah, so I did have a really fun year of just meeting new people. Again, really tough to kind of close off your emotions the right amount, because I didn't want to just sleep with random people, but I wanted to connect with people that I felt like I was getting on with. But yeah, like I remember actually, because I am quite an open book now, like my nan, I talked to my nan about stuff.
Yes, love
she was like, oh, you're being a hussy, and I'm like, yeah, funny, but you know, blokes and their sexuality is so much more fluid than women in their sexuality, and it's like, it's okay if I want to go and meet new people, and I learned something new from each of those experiences, and I don't regret any of them, because it was all with people that I felt connected with on some level. And yeah, now that's kind of, I've learned from those experiences about what I want and what I didn't want, and what I want in a person as well. And yeah, I feel like the kind of world of sex and relationships has opened up a lot to women over the last however many years, because it used to just be, I mean, I say a long time ago, but probably only like 20-30 years ago, it was, you need to find a man at a young age, you need to have babies, you need to get married, and then you are the housewife. We've got so many more opportunities now.
Oof, that gives me palpitations.
The idea of it. It's, yeah, but, and you know, like the man had a lot of freedom. He could go to work with his friends, you know, the dinner would be ready for him at home when he was ready to come home. That's a real generalization. Obviously, I'm not saying, you know, there are some beautiful relationships that come from that dynamic, but women have more freedom now that they can say, actually, I'm not ready for that, and I may never be ready for that. I can go and love lots of different people, and that's okay. It's a really exciting time for us, I think, and there's a lot of power that is being given to women around, yeah, their relationships. I've got the door. I've just got someone at my door. Oh my goodness, sorry.
It's all right, you can speak to them.
Yeah, it's my boyfriend. Oh, I'm sick. Are you okay? I'm on a call. It's okay.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Sorry.
That's okay.
No.
That's okay.
Really nice.
Thank you. it's Mark here in Bridport, and he's bought me a curry.
Oh my gosh, that is perfect timing. He's just brought you your dinner. We're talking about
Food as
freedom and
well.
empowerment.
Food is such a big way to my heart, and he knows it.
Yes. Oh, good showing up. Good guy. But yeah, from what you were saying, totally agree with, like, I didn't write a lot down before this, but I wrote, like, it just feels so taboo for women talking about enjoying casual relationships. And I think it's great when, like you're saying, you're able to be open and, like, educate your nan on this is, like, kind of how we're doing it nowadays. And I remember being open with my mom and being like, yeah, this guy, he's a friend with benefits. Like, that's the only way I can describe the one of these experiences that I had in Mexico. And, like, that's cool, because that's exactly, like, whilst ever it's working for us both. And I think there's, like, a lot of different parts to it, like, you know, are you really okay with these things? Are your needs being met? Are you, but, like, there's no reason to cut yourself off from these things, I don't think. And again, mine sort of just naturally evolved. It was never planned or anything. And yeah, had sort of built quite a good friendship first that I didn't expect was going anywhere in that instance. And then just so happened that that was what we both needed at the time. And I knew it wasn't the same as my previous relationships. I knew it wasn't going to turn into love. I knew that part wasn't there. So can you just enjoy the other parts?
Yeah. And I think as long as, I think friends with benefits is a really interesting thing, because I think it's absolutely great, providing that the foundations are very clear, obviously, like, about mutual respect, good communication. Because I think when people think casual sex, they just think, oh, it doesn't mean anything. But I don't really agree with that. When, like, it can, which I'm sure you probably do as well, I think it can be an extremely beautiful thing. And, you know, when you're in that situation of, yeah, it's a weird type of trust that you're giving to someone and expecting that back. I think the danger with casual sex comes when there is literally zero emotion, in terms of, like, do I respect this person? Are they respecting me? Are we talking about what's going on? Yeah, and I feel like if those things are there, casual sex is brilliant. And like I say, I think you can have a beautiful experience. You can learn a lot about yourself. And I mean, again, like, it's not for everybody, but I feel like it's great that we are supporting women more that are okay with that and do want that and want to focus on themselves alongside having these less intense relationships with people.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just knowing that it's okay, and knowing that, gosh, the labels that women would get for this is just crazy, compared to, you know, the kudos that men would get. And it's very interesting. Like, there's so much, there's so many different tangents to go off on, but I found it really interesting, actually. And I wouldn't say this triggered my whole like, relationship ending or anything, but I didn't used to, when I, like, dived into the self-development world, I wouldn't be watching that much trash TV, and I'd be, like, watching stuff to learn it. And I actually found this interest, though, in celebs go dating. And I was like, what I realized from watching that, I was like, oh gosh, like, so many different realizations along the way. The way that people are talking about who they're attracted to, I was like, oh yeah, there are all these different types of attraction. There's, like, emotional attraction. Do you have sexual attraction? Do you have physical attraction. Like there are all these different types, so sometimes that's where one might be missing in one relationship, and where you can just explore one side with somebody, and like all of these different things for like a full relationship, I suppose.
Yes, that is so funny, because this is a massive thing with that I kind of had an experience with recently-ish, is that, yeah, like, and can you have all of those things with one single person as well, is like a really interesting thing. I think we put a lot of pressure on finding like the perfect person who's going to tick every single box. Part of me is like, I don't think it necessarily exists. And I think the beauty in relationships can come from figuring that out together, like figuring out what each person needs, and seeing if you can come together as a team to create that. And also a big thing that I think I focused on a lot, I was expecting someone else to fill a gap within myself, and I realized I need to give that to myself. I can't put the pressure on someone else to fill that gap if I'm not willing to give it to myself, and that's quite a tough call. But yeah, no, I the recent, not recent, but this is one of those stories where I'm like, should I share this?
Do it.
But so my current boyfriend, who dropped off the curry, we started as casual sex. Like, it was literally, I am a bit older than him, and I must admit I was very much like, let's have sex. So it started off like that, but I was actually seeing someone else casually at the same time, which he knew. He knew that it was literally like, it was this secret thing, because we would live in a very small town. So me and him were sleeping together, hanging out together for about 6 weeks before it became before people started finding out, which is really fun. It was really, really fun and exciting. It was really interesting, because at the same time I was seeing this guy in London, and I had an extremely amazing connection with him, in that we had really similar views. He had such an interesting mind, and yeah, I was extremely inspired by him. But I also had this extremely physical connection with someone else at the same time, and it was really difficult to be like, oh gosh, I almost was like, oh, I wish I could just bundle them up and make one amazing person. And it had me questioning like my views on monogamy, like is polyamory something that would be interesting to...
Poly is so like open, that world is so open now. I learned a lot about it during travel, and like it's very interesting.
I mean, I still don't know if I'd be able to do it or not. You know, I'm in a I don't even know the terminology, to be honest. So I'm in a monogamous is one, yeah.
Yes.
I'm in a monogamous relationship right now. And I remember at the time, you know, seeing both of these people, like they overlapped a little bit. I was like, gosh, could I really do it? And I think a part of me was like, yeah, I could do it. But a massive part was like, I don't think I actually could, because I would want all of the attention from both of them.
Yeah, there's so many different dynamics flying about with it, aren't there?
It's a really interesting topic, to be fair.
It's super interesting, and I think the best place to be in is just to be curious and to be open to learning. So yeah, it's just very interesting. I've seemed to meet quite a few people who would describe themselves as polyamorous during traveling, more women that I was speaking to, and I just want to ask them about it. I was like, I guess I've got no idea, because I just want to like know more about it. Like, I'm curious, because I'm curious, like I question, when you sort of get to this phase of self-development. You're like, question everything. You're like, do I want a normal marriage? Do I want a normal family setup? Like, what does dating look like for me? So like, it's super interesting to learn about all of this stuff. And then there was like at the end of over Christmas, I was in Mexico this last Christmas, and I had the best Christmas and New Year, and I had two really cool guy mates, and we just like hung out and laughed all week. It was just brilliant, and one of them I started to like a little bit more, and I was like, oh, I wonder if there's something more here. And we talked about, it was really interesting actually, I've not had like close guy mates for a long time, so it was interesting to hear their views on dating. Like, they were both on the apps and like going on some dates whilst we were there. And then as I got to know him more, he maybe had like a week left of his trip, so I was like, well, maybe we're just going to hang out together, like just us, for the rest of the trip, because everyone else had sort of gone home. And yeah, we were getting a little bit closer. And then he came round one night. We were just making some food and stuff, and he was like, oh, I just wanted to let you know, because it'd feel a bit weird not to, but I got a match on Hinge, and there was nothing really started up between us, but there was things like we were sort of on the cusp. And he was like, I just wanted to let you know that I'm really interested, and I do want to go on the date. Like, I'd love to still keep exploring this as well. And from him saying that, like, my whole body was just like, oh, like,
Yeah.
no, that, like, I don't want to do. And I think more women perhaps understand that than what men do, because the men that I've told are like, yeah, but that's normal. And I was like, yeah, maybe if I'd have kind of, I don't know, thought of that from the start, or now I know, like, on Hinge that people are probably dating other people, and that's fine. But I don't know, the whole thing of like, there's this week left, I don't know what date you're gonna go and see this person. Do I want to get go any deeper? And so I was just like, I think he was just thought he was kind of like telling me, but I was like, oh, there's kind of a decision I need to make now as to whether this continues or not, because and yeah, eventually I said to, yeah, it just, I would rather, like, and there's obviously nothing wrong with what he did. I'm like, I'm glad you told me. But
the communication is fantastic that he,
like, we can like, I'm happy to see you as a friend again before I go, but I don't want to do it. I don't want anything to go further, because I don't want to have that, like, oh, am I gonna bump into you? Oh, and the funniest thing was, I literally did walk past the restaurant where they were together on their first date. But it wasn't even a thing, so it wasn't really like that, but it was just like, yeah, that
weird.
I don't know, that felt a bit weird. So I was like, okay, maybe, yeah, monogamy is the thing for me for now anyway. We'll see.
I think, again, I think it comes down to kind of like core values of good communication, respecting whoever is involved, and just kind of making sure that you're protecting yourself as well, and being true to what you're really feeling, and not pretending to go along with something that actually doesn't sit right with you, which again, like, changes, like it might change from 1 month to the next, and that's great. And I think it's just brilliant that we've got that freedom to just be curious and figure out what does work for you or not.
And like you say, like, the freedom to change your mind, like, like what worked for us last year might not work for us this year. Like, I feel like I go into a different chapter of life so often, like, you know, with where I'm traveling or where I'm at in my business, as to what my capacity would look like to have a relationship, or, you know, the things that I've got going on in my life all affect the amount of space I've actually got. Like, that's what I think at the moment. I think I actually joined the dating app, I think, coming back from Mexico, and was like, oh, maybe I do want a little bit more, because I'd had this interest with this guy, and I thought, yeah, actually, now I know that there are people out there with similar visions and beliefs, and like people who do want to travel longer term and things like that. And I was like, maybe I do, but I always go back to the self-love stuff, and I'm like, but what is it that I'm craving? And I know I can find that within myself.
Exactly.
So then
That's
I'm
a really
like,
good
yeah,
one.
that's why I'm just sort of half in on like the dating apps as well. And like, I really don't need to put any pressure on it. I kind of, the natural ways worked out really, really well for me. And it sounds like you as well. Like,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
where most of yours have come from too.
yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on it very, very briefly, but yeah, I do believe that things come into life at the right time, and it might not seem like if it's very fleeting, it can be quite upsetting, but it's like you learn a lesson that you were obviously meant to learn, and that will bring you on to the next thing. So I think you've just got to trust that it's going to work out, even if it's a bit messy. You learn from it, and yeah, just try and tap into what you're really feeling and stay true to yourself.
I love that so much. Any final, I know I feel like we could just ramble on about this all day, like there's still so much to share, but part 2 coming soon. But like any final thoughts or questions or anything from your end?
I think, well, like I just said, I think it's fantastic that we've got this freedom to kind of choose different paths at different times as well, the freedom to change your mind. And for any women that are kind of doubting that at all, just be like, oh my gosh, yeah, just feel that power in your freedom, and yeah, just do you for a bit. And it's okay it can feel like you're being selfish perhaps by wanting to stay single or not wanting to be in a relationship anymore, but it really, I think so much beautiful, powerful stuff comes from just tapping into what you're really feeling and going with your gut intuition about what you want. Yeah, I could probably waffle on for ages about that, to be fair. But yeah, we'll tighten. Do you kind of have any final things that you feel have come up with that?
I think I would agree with what you're saying there, in just like take the power back into your own hands, and whether that is like for some time just being with yourself, learning about yourself and your own body and your own needs and your own desires and what you really want from life. I think that is a super, super important stage that I went through to then be ready for more conscious relationships, let's say. I think that sometimes sounds really dickish, but like yeah, I am more consciously doing relationships than like what I was before, if that makes sense. And yeah, be yourself, follow your desires and urges, like speak to friends or people who get it about your experiences. If you don't have those people, send us DMs. Like, we're open, we are here. And yeah, be curious, like try different things, and if you don't like them, you don't have to continue with them, but you'll learn some more about yourself. And I'm such a big believer in like almost like announcing yourself as like energetically being ready, and then it's probably not going to be that long until something shows up in your life. And in the meantime, just continue doing you and following your other passions and desires, getting out there in places to make connections and make people without necessarily the burden of dating or like having to intentionally go somewhere to meet men or or whoever whoever you're attracted to, and just live life in the meantime and enjoy the journey, as always.
Definitely. Yeah, I've literally, as you're talking, so many things are popping in my head that I want to say, but we're gonna have to have another part to this.
We're gonna have to have part 2. Tell us what you wish we spoke more on today. Tell us what you want to ask us. Like, it feels really freeing just to open up about these things. And there's little bits, and I don't even think we've said anything that wild today, but there's a bit like, oh my God, I'm saying this and the public can see that, we've had a casual relationship, or we, oh my gosh, but like, yeah, this is the power in sharing. So thank you so much for coming on today, being so open and honest. I feel like we would have had exactly the same chat had it just been us, like behind closed doors, which is what I want these conversations to be all about. So thank you so much, love you lots, and I will catch up with you soon.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Take care, bye bye.